Morning, everybody. I think we're just waiting on a few people to join. So if you could just give us another minute or two. Okay, Caroline, I think we should kick off. I'm just mindful of time and we've got quite a lot to get through. So welcome, everybody. Thank you so much to those of you whose companies have agreed to participate in the pilot. I'm just going to talk a little bit about the initiative and the objectives and the purpose. And Caroline will then take you through the next steps in terms of the actual input of the data. So if you could move to the next slide, please, Caroline. Okay, so just what we're realizing, I think, in today's world of work and even just, life in general, is that really data is the new oil. And we are really on the back foot if we don't have good data, if we don't have frequent enough data, and it really does power everything that we do. Next slide, please. So, why in particular this initiative? And during COVID, we noted that the lack of medtech data became glaringly apparent. Suddenly, SAMED was being requested to provide all types of data to a whole host of different entities, National Department of Health, Department of Trade and Industry, private hospital groups, and they needed this data in order to actually manage one, diagnostics, two, PPE availability, and really to manage the situation in the pandemic. And we just didn't have this information at the tip of our fingers. So we decided that we needed to do something. It did take us quite some time. We created a task team, but I would like to just share with you a quick video. It's about 8 to 10 minutes long, and forgive us if you've seen it already, but this is a video, a recording of Avanti, who's actually the lead of the project. I hope we can hear. Caroline, I can't hear anything just yet. And I know you're on mute, so I don't know if that's causing...
Analysis a priority for your company? If we could take a minute or two to just answer that question, everyone. Okay, overwhelmingly yes. I think the key there, is it a priority or not? I suppose for some institutions, not necessarily a priority, but certainly some level of focus that we can put on it. Okay. So you may have heard previously that SAMED is undertaking a data integrity collection exercise. And what we would like to do is to launch this platform very soon, but more importantly, give you an idea of why it is that we're actually doing this. And before I start and get to the panel on more detail, I'd like to just relate a story as to how this entire thing started. And if you just indulge me for a few minutes, because it's quite an interesting story. In 2020, when lockdown was announced, just before lockdown had started, two platforms were created in the country. And the one was B4SA, through BUSA. As you know, SAMED is members of BUSA. And the second platform was the government platform that was created to manage the pandemic. These two platforms consisted of key stakeholders in the country that were tasked with everything to do with supply of health products throughout the country. Let us just say that SAMED was on these two platforms from day one, and the work that happened throughout the years thereafter was actually game-changing for the country and how we addressed the pandemic. However, in all of this, when we first got the call to join B4SA, Tanya and Nikki proceeded to create a spreadsheet that I would say became the basis for all demand planning for the country. And I say this with absolute certainty because we had to manage PPE for supply throughout the country. And Tanya and Nikki had started this at the office. As you can imagine, it was the start of lockdown and everybody wanted PPE. I got a call the week after lockdown had happened, and the call was simply, the minister wants to see you. You need to come to Pretoria. Now, at the time, I was homeschooling, mum bum, vacuuming, and all of the rest of it. And I got ready and thought, okay, I am so terrified. Firstly, the road from Kailami to Pretoria Department of Health, empty. And then I'm thinking, if I'm stopped, what am I going to say? I'm going to see the minister? I got a call. So I had all these things in my mind, and I get to the Department of Health, and we go into a room, and there's 5 of us there. Stavros Nicolau, whom you know, myself, Minister Zweli Mkhize, he had an assistant there. We had a SAPRA representative, I think it was Khatija, and we subsequently had 5 such meetings throughout the next 3 months of this nature. We were sitting in a very, very big room in the Department of Health, just 5 of us separated, meters apart, fearful as ever, all masked up and everything. And Pharma had started, and the minister said, okay, where are we with Pharma? SAPRA and IPASA, Stavros at the time, pulled out a beautiful spreadsheet, and they said, these are the top 11 drugs we need to address this pandemic. This is the amount we have in the country. This is where it is located. This is where we manufacture it. We have a slight API problem with this product, but we'll pull it in from Mpumalanga, and we're able to bring this in. Ba, 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 ba. Minister said, happy, good to go. These are our next steps. They look at me. I've got an A3 spreadsheet that Tanya and Nikki had now created. And the minister looks at me and says, how many masks do we have in the country? I'm looking down, looking up. I'm saying, 5,000. And he says, 5,000 masks in the whole country? I said, yes. He said, how many is coming in? I said, about 20,000. And he said, is that it? I said, that is all I have. Then he goes on to say, okay, how many gloves do we have in country? It was between 20 and 30,000. How many coming in? I don't know. Are these gloves nitrile? I don't know. In essence, I had no information. And this was just week 1 of lockdown for the pandemic. I won't go into too much detail, but every meeting thereafter, and I can tell you after that meeting, Tanya and Nikki were on the phone to every single SAMED member company. Do you make PPE? Are you expecting a shipment in? Do you produce nitrile gloves? Do you have manufacturing capability in country? Now, the whole moment itself was massive, I can tell you. And I learned 2 things from all of these meetings, which subsequently the next one was with Minister Patel, and then, of course, the Motsepe Foundation, because they had Solidarity Fund coming in. We were chartering flights. We were trying to move product from Limpopo to Mpumalanga to KZN. I mean, it was massive. I'd learned 2 things then, and one of them was a personal learning. The moment was way too big for me. It was overwhelming to decide who gets PPE and what happens to everything in the country. But the second thing I learned is that we have no information. In any of the meetings I had to go to, it ended up being phoning Tanya thereafter and calling every company. And thank God to many companies with the SAMED membership who came to the party, who moved things around, chartered flights at cost, did so many things to get PPE to the pandemic. It is at that moment that we realized if we as a sector were now invited to meet the minister, we were invited to sit on 2 very, very important groups who were changing people's lives by the day. And we had no information to go with. As simple as whether we had nitrile, no nitrile. Can we make syringes here or can't we make syringes here? Those were the types of discussions we were having. And this is what started to say that if as a sector we are invited to the table, can we please have the information to go there with? It doesn't bode well for us as a group. And subsequent to this, we saw things happening that people were not part of our sector, I mean, travel agencies were providing gloves. We had, and we don't need to talk about this now, but you know the consequence of not having the information to provide us with integrity as a sector to be able to supply that which was needed. All a long story short, we've decided to undergo the SAMED Data Integrity Initiative. And this means that we want to embark on a credible way to collect information about our sector, members and non-members, but we needed a way where we could ensure that the process was seamless for you as companies, the information was independent and credible, and that when we meet stakeholders in the future, be it for NHI, be it for policy development, be it for future pandemics, that we have the information that we need. So this is what the exercise is about. I'm not going to go into too much detail. We are really busy creating the platform for everybody. I think the take-home message from this is that we have done a lot of work on the questions that you've asked. Is the information going to be protected in terms of confidentiality? Yes. Is it going to be an independent collection activity? Yes. Are we going to make sure that as companies, your information is always going to be used in the correct manner? Yes. So I ask you, if we require this information, and we will be launching the platform in a few months, to please engage with the platform, participate. The idea is that we run it with a few pilot companies at first, so that we can make sure all the sort of creaks and whatever it is that needs sorting out is sorted out. And when we roll it out, the aim is to do this probably twice a year, and maybe ad hoc if we're meeting certain stakeholders. We want to use an online platform, again, that the information that you put on there and the information that you can pull out, because that's also a facility that we want to offer members, is that if you want to pull out an aggregate report that says there are so many companies who perhaps sell nitrile gloves in South Africa, that can be pulled. And this aggregate information will be done by health economists, by statisticians, etc., so that we can have a platform that's credible for you. I'm going to go through the slides just as a matter of interest.
I think, Caroline,
if you look at the platform, it will be something like this.
Thanks. Great, and if you can just go back to the slides. So what we did over the last 2 years since the pandemic and since we came up with this idea, and actually, you know, it was Avanti's idea, so kudos to her. We created, I think we had 4 task teams, 1 task team looking at output, another one looking at comms, another one looking at content, and another one looking at operations. And we came up with a RFP. We went out and we had a number of companies bid. We had a bid committee who met with the bidding companies, and finally we approved ASG to be the service provider to develop the platform for us. And in fact, we have ASG on the call in the form of Marilise and Dane. We then started working with ASG about probably over 2-3 months back. We also asked key stakeholders for their ideas and questions that they want to have answered around our sector to make sure that we incorporated those into the questionnaire. So really for us, this project is essential. The data is essential. It'll help us accurately quantify our sector. It'll demonstrate the significance of our industry. We believe it'll contribute to the sustainability of the sector and ultimately the healthcare system. It does stand to impact economic growth and South African competitiveness. There is a glaring lack of data. You know, I am often asked, almost every other month, to do a presentation to international entities. DTIC has asked me to do these presentations. The Taiwanese Trade and Business Commission, the Koreans, the Irish, the Israelis, they're all interested in bringing medtech to South Africa and invest in our country. And I just don't have the data to share with them. Fitch does some gathering of data, and Frost and Sullivan and the who's who of South Africa, but really it's very much I think an extrapolation, and it's not real genuine data that we know our members have. So we are relying on you, the members, to gather robust and reliable data. Next slide, please, Caroline. The data is going to be aggregated to generate industry-specific reports, which, as I said, we will use to inform strategies, decisions, submissions, and engagement with key stakeholders on behalf of the sector. And that could be on anything like medtech regulations, economic policy, NHI, transformation, or even, future pandemics. The plan is to also allow members to have access to their own dashboard and reports, and we will be developing those dashboards as we go along. And I think Avanti's probably covered very strongly and clearly why we need this data in order to give us credibility and integrity when we sit at that table of key stakeholders. Next slide, please, Caroline. So the data is secure. We've worked hard with the service provider ASG to make sure that there are a number of measures and technologies that have been put in place to really make sure your data is secure. There are strong password requirements. There will be regular password resets. Dormant accounts will be deactivated. The website domain that we're using has a security certificate, and we're using Azure, an Azure platform, and there is encryption within that platform. Please be assured, no individual company's data will ever be shared with a competitor, and all data usage will consider competition law compliance and other regulations. And if you wish, every participant has an option to sign an NDA with SAMED. No one other than the SAMED administrators, so at this point in time, it's Caroline and myself, will see individual companies' data, but absolutely no other competitor or user on the system will be able to access another company's data. You might be able to access aggregated reports, but even those reports will make sure that they are pulled considering competition law requirements. Next slide, please, Caroline. So as we have already communicated to you, but just as a reminder, what we need from the members is there are a number of sections within the questionnaire. There's a section on company details, on financial data, employment data and transformation-related data, regulatory, local R&D, local manufacturing, import and export. And we require each SAMED member to appoint a primary and an alternate contact. The role of the primary contact is that you essentially are the coordinator. You are the custodian of the initiative within your company. So you have a very important role. One, you need to assign the appropriate users against the categories of data that's mentioned on the left-hand side of that table. You need to make sure that the right person is assigned to that category, and it might in smaller companies actually be the same person doing 3 or 4. You will also have the ability to say that, an individual who is assigned to that particular category won't be allowed to see another category, because financial information can be sensitive, and we don't necessarily want the, the person who is putting in the company details to see the financial info. There are also some questions that are mandatory. And we've thought through that very carefully. And then there are some that are not mandatory, particularly in the financial section. However, having said that, we do ask, for example, what your turnover has been for the last 3, I think it's since 2019. That is not a mandatory question to answer, but we do really need to get a sense of how big this sector is and the value it brings to the economy. So even for the sensitive data, please do consider completing it. The alternate is really only there to step in when the primary person is unavailable. So you will receive communication from SAMED as the primary contact as to when we're going to push out a call to complete the questionnaire. We will communicate. We actually have a marketing plan and we have a PR company who's supporting us with this. But it is up to you if you're not going to be around during that period that the info needs to be gathered, and there will be deadlines for for completing the questionnaire, to please make sure your alternate is available to take over your role. Each section will take approximately 30 to maybe 45 minutes, depending on whether the person who is the assigned user has all the information at hand. It might take a bit longer if you need to go and get information from within the company, a bit less if you have all of that information on hand. And we estimate that the entire questionnaire will probably take about, well, let's say 30 minutes times. I think there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sections. So you can work that out. My maths isn't good this Friday morning. Okay, next slide. Okay, so we are launching our pilot next week. We would like to give you a deadline of 1 week to make sure that all your users have completed the questionnaire. You as the primary contacts will need to assign users, and we would like you to do that on Monday. We want to give you 24 hours to add your users, and then the users will have 4 working days to complete the various sections. Please send your feedback to Caroline at that email address. We want to know of any errors or glitches. We have tested it in-house within SAMED, but obviously we're not a medtech company, so the info that we've inputted, it's kind of thumbsuck, and we have retested a number of times. So we have, as best as we could, fixed any glitches that were apparent to us. We also want ideas for improvement. We want this system to be seamless. We want it to be easy to use, easy to understand. So if there are questions that are worded that appear vague, you don't understand how to respond to them, please just pop that in an email to Caroline. And I think, Caroline, what we should do is we probably need to let the users, the other users that are going to be assigned, to have this presentation as well. Yeah, I'll leave it up to the individual companies to decide. The users can, as they're completing it, send their errors or glitches or suggestions for improvement directly to Caroline, or if the primary contact wants to see that, then the users can send it to the primary contact, who can collate and send it to us all in one. But that's up to you as individual companies to decide. If there are questions that aren't there, that you think are pertinent, because you'd like to see the answer, an aggregated answer to that question, let us know. Because this isn't just about us. We also want this platform, this initiative, to really give our members credible business intelligence data that you can use in your company. We will be sending a letter to all the CEOs and MDs of the member companies, urging them to participate. We have already sent out a call to members, but we've only had, I think, about 30, 35 companies come back so far, other than the pilot group with their primary and alternate contacts. We are planning to do the big launch mid-end Jan. We're a little bit behind in terms of our timing, and we just thought, rather than rushing this and trying to get members to complete this beginning of December, which is not a great time, that we'll rather do the big launch in Jan. And the plan, as Avanti said in the video, is to do a biannual push for members to complete, and that would be March and November. But there may be ad hoc pushes when we get questions that need urgent answers. So we do have the ability to just send out some questions and not the entire questionnaire as and when we need to. Next slide, please, Caroline. We do anticipate that this platform is going to grow and that it's going to meet other needs. both for SAMED and our members. We are looking at incorporating the code certification test and the compliance officers' certification reports into the system. We also have identified that members struggle a little with identifying what is fair market value when they engage with healthcare professionals as consultants or on advisory boards or to do speaking slots. And so with competition law compliance in mind, we are starting to consider a system where members can plug in what those amounts are that they're paying. We can get an aggregated figure and we can start doing some stats in a sense to guide members. Not to dictate to members because that would be a specific fee, but certainly we can look at some parameters which would be within competition law compliance. And we're thinking that we might even use this platform for incorporating the outstanding debt that government has with members. And in time, we also want to do market statistics. So unit sales of actual products. And we can start then looking at, what are the trends in the market over time and really get some interesting ideas out of that. I'm now going to hand over to Caroline, who's actually going to show you the system. And then we will allow time for questions.
Thanks so much, Tanya. So I am just going to take you through the platform just to give you an idea of what you can expect. And then also just to show you where you can add your users. So essentially, when we send you the link, you're going to come to this landing page. You're going to enter your username, and then you're going to say forgot password. That way you can reset a password that will be just for you. SAMED won't have that password. That password will then be safe in your capable hands. Essentially, this landing page will have that same video that we played a little bit earlier. We will also be linking the frequently asked questions, which I sent out this morning, as well as the instructions for primary and alternative users on this page. So it will kind of be a resource hub for you as well as your users when you assign them. So I've just made up a test account just so that we can show you, but essentially you'll be logging in. And then the first thing that you will encounter, I'm just going to zoom in so you can see it, is that we have a terms and conditions, which if you say I do not accept, it will take you out of the system. It will notify SAMED, but you can sort of read through those terms and conditions and accept at your leisure. If you have concerns on this, do reach out to us. As I said, it will notify us, so we will reach out to you if you do not first reach out to us. So this page is currently blank, but in future, this is where your dashboards will appear. So this will be the sort of overview. Some of the reports that will be available will be available on this page. As we get information, we will develop those dashboards. But in the meantime, the menu sits on the left-hand side, and under settings, you'll see it says accounts. This account section is where you're going to add your users. So you just click on add user, you will fill in their various details into the system. You can give them a password. They can then reset that password. Again, when they log in, they can just manage their profile and reset their password. But this is sort of that area you can set a password, and your option is to say to them they need to keep that password the same. This is the various sections. So obviously when you logged in, you are a primary or an alternative contact, but you can assign the various sections. So you can assign multiple sections. You can assign just one section to a particular user. If you assign just one section, they're only going to see that section when they are logged in. The questionnaire then is available under questionnaire. So obviously, if they are allocated only import export, then they will only see import and export when they log in. So that will be the only one that's available. I have, for this test profile, just opened all of them so that we can just go through them. So the first questionnaire we have is the company details. So under the company details, there's various information that we require that's specific to your company. And I'll add some test data in there just so that you can see that as you sort of entering information, the twist questionnaire will start telling you how much data you have completed. So it's going to tell you as you progress how far you are. And with yes or no options, depending on what you select, it might open additional options, for you to add additional information for us to be able to use. So we've tried to make it as easy as possible. You won't have to type out the full name of the country. You can, for example, just start typing in Canada and it comes up and you can select that. So we've really tried to make sure that it's as easy as possible to use. When you're adding in your location, I'm going to just use the SAMED offices. It will come up and then you can select that and it'll even show you on the map where that location is. You can add additional sites if you have additional sites. What's important here is just to let us know what kind of a site that is, whether it's an office, manufacturing, distribution center, just so that we have an accurate reflection of the different sites across South Africa. And then within the business activities, it's fairly self-explanatory. You can say what you do. Again, you can select all that are applicable. And then when you're ready, you just click save. So the company also can have an ownership scheme and the employees, employee share, or if you click other, you'll be able to tell us what that other is. If you then try to click away before you've saved, for example, then it's going to bring up this reminder just to say that you haven't yet saved. Do you want to save your questionnaire before you continue on? If you click OK, you move on, but it might not have saved that information. So it's just really important that between saves, you just click save. It'll say successfully saved, and then you'll have that information saved. When it comes to back capturing the information, we have current year, which is 2022, or the various backdated years. So this is that backdating that Tanya was talking about. You select the year, you select the back capture month that you wanted to select it in. Again, you can say current as in November this year, and then whenever your financial year end is, and then you will complete this information. The thing about the back capture information is you'll only have to enter it once. Once you've entered that, that's logged in the back, and you won't need to repeatedly update that information. So it will just sort of be for us for trend analysis. And then we break down your spend in terms of various categories. And when you do that, you'll again click save. And then when you go on to the next year, 2020, what it's going to do is it's going to still have the amount you just previously entered for 2019, or if you did 2021 first, you can just type over that. It's the reason it's doing that, and it'll only be this one time, is so that in future you just have to update and not have to go back and re-enter any information that was in these fields. So the next area is employment. So under employment, we've broken it down. Again, you can back capture all the way back to 2019. This is really helpful to build trends, to show growth, to show improvements in BEE. So that's sort of why we need the back capturing on the employment information. It has the number of employees. It breaks down sort of what your BEE level is. Again, we've made it fairly easy, so you can just select. We have the various points according to pillars. And then we have a section where you can drag and drop what is the most important to you. So if skills development is the most important to you, you can put it at the top. If enterprise development is thereafter, then you can put it, and that will just sort of give us some statistics in terms of where we can help you. Then we have some free text sections, so you can tell us as much detail as you would like, as well as who is within the organization is tasked with driving BBBEE for the company. Again, some yes, no, depending on whether you select yes or no, there may be additional information that is required, but I think it's fairly self-explanatory. Yeah, so we do have just a couple of requests for success stories, and then we would love to know a bit more about your SED programs, whether you're participating in yes, and whether or not you belong to a CETA. We do have the CETAs listed, so you're more than welcome to just select the one that you are currently participating in. And next we have SAPRA, just regulatory matters. We're going to speak about whether or not your company is licensed. If no, we're going to ask you why not. We know that some companies are exempt, but the yes, it will ask you what license type you have, and you can select any or all, and then it'll give you the expiry dates for those licenses. The reason why we're asking this is that we can then also just send out a reminder probably 100 days before the license expires, just to remind you that at the 90-day point, you will need to submit for your license renewal. This way, it's just an added benefit where it'll send out a reminder to you, and you can then chase those targets. We'll also just want to know whether or not you have different ISO certifications and whether that's accredited locally or internationally. We know that this section might be quite well populated, but please do tell us, it's one of the ways that we can then see what are the challenges you as a member are facing. We have products broken down by their GMDN codes, and you can say whether or not they import or exported. This is one of the sections where they're just working on still today, but the country will be that same drop-down list that you saw in the company information tab. So you'll just be able to select the company. You won't have to type it in. If there is any other that we haven't mentioned, you can then just enter those in here. For those companies that do R&D, you can see this is a section that's specifically around that. You can say yes or no in terms of whether you are performing that. And no might be that we might just want to know a bit more as to why you aren't currently applying for tax rebates. But then you can complete the section in terms of what your company has done predominantly over the last 5 years, whether it's been different types, whether it's been with academia, other companies, or so forth. We have made it so that you can type in the organizations you're currently working with, which of them were successful, and if you have any external parties and where they are based. Under local manufacture, we've tried to make it as simple as possible. You can import how many internal, how many external manufacturing facilities you might have, and then you can kind of indicate whether something is internal, in-house, or outsourced in terms of product design. We understand that sometimes it might be yes for both, so we've left that as an option, or you can just put it in as is fit for your company. It'll allow you to sort of say what percentage of your manufacturing capability you're using and whether or not it is easily scalable. Depending on what you enter in here, in-house, outsourced, it will then open up these 3 or 5 or 2, depending on what your current facilities are, tabs, and you can then give those facilities names. You can see here it's the in-house and the outsourced as pulled from question 1. You can tell us where they are, and then you can just select what machinery, materials, or other that you are using. So you can select more than one, but if you're only using one or two things, you can just select those. We've left space for other materials should you be using materials that aren't listed above. We also would like to know if your company is interested in co-developing or manufacturing medical technology innovations from research institutions. So you can either say yes or no. If you say no, it will be no further questions. If you said yes, it would tell you to add a bit more detail. So under import and export, again, we've tried to keep it as simple as possible. You can then select the companies that you import from. Say you importing from, okay, I think this is one of the areas, I think, Marilise, where I just gave you that not everything is pulling. But essentially it allows you to pull if it wanted to allow me to do so now, but then you can also just rank them and it will have the little number beside it. But this is one of the things we just noted yesterday is it's still being a bit challenging and they are working on that today. The same will go for export. As you drag it across, you'll be able to rank them on the right-hand side. And then we also have if you are using any trade agreements, you can select as many as are applicable to you. If there's others, you can type those, why they are beneficial, what product categories those are in, the incentives, GMDN codes, and what would incentivize your company to locally manufacture. And then that is that. So I'm happy to take any questions if there are. I see that Tanya has put in a request for me to put my cell phone number in there. That is my cell phone number. You're welcome to phone me if you are struggling with something or you can't find something. Notando, I see your hand is up.
Good morning, Caroline. Good morning, everyone.
Morning.
Just the one question where you mentioned about the passwords, right? That it's only managed as us, like you said, put it into our hands. But how then do, like, because you mentioned that you start off by saying forget password and then you then create your own password. So probably that first password will be system generated. But then how then do you manage to make sure that everything is going smoothly, or do we then pose questions to you like within like the different users there? Can that also be managed into the system as well, or we refer back to, okay, fine, this person has tried to reset, or maybe they forgot the password or something, and then like reset, how many chances and stuff of the different users?
Sure. So in terms of the different users, you as a primary contact, you're going to have the password reset. So you're going to reset it. But for your users, you're going to create that password. So it's not a case of they won't know the password. You're going to create that and you're going to give it to them. The only time that they might forget it is if they go into their managed profile and they reset their password. So here's an area where the password can be reset. And because of that, they might change it. You might want to make it an internal policy that you give them a specific strong password and they don't change it away. That way, if you need to, you have access to their account. But generally speaking, they can change it here if need be, but you would be setting that password. If they do struggle, so they struggle to reset their password, or you're struggling to reset your password when you're doing that first login as the primary contact, then you can just let me know and we will deal with it from a technical perspective. Does that answer your question?
Yes, and then just one thing to ask. So also with the changes, so we need to inform you in writing if the user has changed of that particular category.
No. So again, you're going to be able to manage all your users. So all your different users will be listed here, and you'll be able to delete them. You'll be able to edit them. As the primary contact, you have full control over your different users and what section they are assigned to.
Okay. Thank you so much, Caroline.
My pleasure. Tanya?
Caroline, I'm just wondering the process. So only once we have all the users assigned by the primary contacts will we then
Do a
send a
push.
push. Yeah.
Yes.
So I'm
Correct.
just wondering, yeah, we need to maybe like sort of end of business Monday, go into the back end and see which of the pilot companies haven't yet added their users, and maybe just do a little reminder, because
Absolutely, we can do that from the admin perspective.
because just remember, pilot people, that we can't send the push for your users to complete the questionnaire until you've actually logged them all on the system.
Yeah, this is very important, because if they're not on there when we send the push, they're not going to get the notification to go in and do that. Again, you will have the link, so they should be able to go via the link and log in. And again, they'll only have access to that. But then it's sort of a workaround, and it's not easy in their inbox where they click and go directly to the section that they've got to complete. Are there any other questions? I see some things in the chat. Let me just go there.
Sorry, Caroline, I suggested maybe also have the primary contacts, a copy of the questionnaire, because that might help them also to decide who should be,
Sure.
which, yeah, to
So
allocate the users.
we do have that, and post this call, I will just circulate that out with the recording of this session. Tracy?
Hi, Caroline and Tanya and the rest of the team. So just a couple of things which perhaps has been addressed in the preamble, but I just want to get our IT on board as well. So the first question is there any specific system requirements? So in terms of Windows or anything like that? And then perhaps is there, we'll have to then on our side certainly check our firewalls in terms of the links. So I think that from a buyer perspective, we definitely would need to do a bit of a trial run and see if that link doesn't get kicked out by a firewall. If it does, then we'll have to then get IT involved, and maybe everyone else can also just have a word on their side. Links are sometimes problematic, so we all know that. And then lastly, if you allocate a person to a section, and you need to change that after they have completed a part of it, can that still happen? So if a part of the questionnaire is allocated to the financial manager as an example, but let's just say there's something in there that they can't answer, can they save and then reallocate someone?
So you can allocate as many users to one section as you like, Tracy. So if there's 3 people that need to collaborate on completing a section, you can allocate 3 different users to that section. You don't have to unallocate someone and reallocate,
Okay.
someone to that section.
And
So
you can
have.
do it. Oh, sorry, we have a lag. You go.
Sure, no problem. So then you can just ask, my only thing is I'd say to them, when they work, just to say fairly regularly, just to make sure that they're not, and there will be a log, if you will. So from our side, we'll be able to see the log in terms of just to make sure that no one's overriding anyone else's information. Marlies, you can just confirm that for me.
Yes, so always remember, if someone already answered a question and someone else go and answer the same question, we will always save the last answer.
Okay, all right, that's good. And so maybe one last thing on that. What I'm maybe asking is, after you start answering a section, could you still allocate a user? So I understand at the start you can allocate 3 people, and let's just say you go through and you realize you need a new person, but you've already started the section, you can still allocate someone.
Absolutely. So at any point in time, you can add additional users.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Back to the chat. So Marilise has just made a recommendation to rather use Chrome as your browser. Tracy, if the link is blocked, please do let us know. We can then just sort of work on that with you. But yeah, so Marilise says Chrome has the best functionality if you're using the link. I don't see any further hands or questions. Tanya, back to you.
Okay, so yeah, if there's nothing more, just to say a very big thank you to all of you who have agreed to participate. We're very grateful. And we really want to make this platform something that is of value to you as members and not just, for SAMED to use on your behalf. So really, any and all comments and inputs are absolutely welcomed. And if you're having problems, reach out to Caroline. You can phone, you can email, and we'll try and resolve those issues. No more last questions from anyone? Dane, Marilise, do you want to say anything maybe?
We're all good.
Sorry,
Thank you so much.
I'm putting you on the spot.
That's okay, Tanya. No, we'll be ready as rain next week and supporting in the background.
Awesome. Okay, thanks everybody. Have a wonderful weekend. Go well.
Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.